One morning, I was in the shower, and I discovered this small lump in my breast. I called my gynecologist, and he told me I needed to go for a mammogram. I find myself in a small, dark room with a large machine and a female technician. Hi, is this your first mammogram? Okay, come on in. Now, place your feet here and here. Good. Now, I'm gonna lift your breast onto this plate. Oh, it's a little bit cold? Oh, okay. And now, I'm gonna lower the top plate down. Yeah, just a little bit more. Yeah, just a little bit more. There we go. Now, place your hand here and here. Don't move. Oh my God! I'm not going anywhere. My breast is pressed into an unnatural shape. I know this machine was invented by a man. I'd like to see them use this procedure to check for testicular cancer. Sure enough, I had a lump. My gynecologist said not to worry, come back in 6 months. Well, 6 months later, I did not feel like going back and hugging that machine. I asked him, wasn't there another procedure that could yield a little more information? I find myself in a small, dark room with a large machine and a female technician. Come on in, lay down here. Okay, where's your lump? Okay, I'm gonna put this on. Oh, it's a little cold? Sorry. Now, this is a sensing device. It appears to be solid. At that moment, a strand of fear entered the top of my head and wove itself into my entire being. My gynecologist told me I needed to find a surgeon who would do a lumpectomy. I didn't know any surgeons, so I began shopping around for surgeons. Surgeon number 1. He was the best in the state. Lectured at the medical school. Everybody knew him. It took me 2 months to get an appointment with this guy. He must be good. On the day of the appointment, I filled out a questionnaire. Family medical history, birth control choices. Are you allergic to any medications? He told me exactly what I needed to do, scheduled me for surgery the next week, and had me out of his office like that. Surgeon number 2. I filled out a questionnaire, family medical history, birth control choices. Are you allergic to any medication? I knew I was getting older. The doctors were getting younger. This guy reminded me of my kid brother's best friend. I found myself thinking, maybe he would do better surgery if we had sex. Surgeon number 3. I filled out a questionnaire, family medical history, birth control choices. Are you allergic to any medication? She was direct, informative, supportive, assured me that a lumpectomy would be a simple, one-day outpatient procedure and let me decide when I was ready. I set the date. Only now I knew I was going to be entering a world of hospitals, a place I never go, where germs run free. Where's an open wound? And doctors and nurses are busy. I'll be with you in a moment. Oh. And they use strange-smelling chemicals to keep everything clean. Ew, it stinks in here. I need a breath of fresh air. I knew I was going to need a little help getting ready for this experience, so I called together a circle of friends, and we decided to make some dolls, healing dolls, dolls of a goddess, a healing spirit. My doll was stuffed with white nylon netting erupting out of her head. She had on wild gold lame pants, an animal skin vest, and a red velvet smile. I had my companion with me to take into surgery. Another friend from my cancer survivor group had given me a tape to prepare me for the experience. You are now entering the room in which the procedure will take place, and sleepily through half-closed eyes, you will see the color green, bright lights, and awareness of people moving around about you. The clean green uniforms of the surgical staff, and you are becoming even more relaxed with each thing that you see. When I awoke, my surgeon was hovering beside the operating room table, her mouth open. We found cancer her mouth closed. As they gently lifted me off of the gurney, off of the table onto the gurney, they rolled me down the hallway, and I watched the acoustical tiles and light panels passing over my head, and I wondered, with all the people they have rolling down this hallway on their back, why don't they have little signs with arrows on the ceiling that say, operating room, recovery room, restrooms, emergency exit? The ride home in the car was filled with silence. This is my body. I've been in it most of my life, except for those few occasions when I left, but I always came back. It's my home. But it wasn't always like this. When I was a kid, I wanted to be like my dad, outside, chest bared in the sun, getting ready to mow the lawn. I pulled my shirt off and ran outside. Dad! Dad! Can I help? He took one look at me. Get back in the house. Put your shirt on. Don't come out here like that. And then, when I was 14, my mother decided I needed to go on high estrogen birth control pills. I didn't even have a boyfriend. She was the one having all the affairs. And then, 6 months later, I woke up one morning. I had breasts. Perky, young, nipple-pointing upward breasts. Large enough to be noticed, not too large so as to be a burden. I loved them. The weight, the shape, the movement. Pretty soon I noticed that there was a change in the way boys spoke to me. They stopped looking at my face. They were staring at my breasts. I wanted to learn ventriloquism so I could continue to communicate with them. I have breasts, tits, grapefruits, bazoomas, jumps, assets, 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 assets. And then I studied modern dancing. And I began to notice that all the other girls were little stick figures, and that maybe breasts were not an asset in this line of work, because the choreographers wanted you to notice the movement through space and time, not the breasts bouncing across the stage. Then I got my first job dancing in Japan, topless. For 4 months, my body was draped in costumes designed to make you look at my breasts. Creatively wrapped strands of pearls, skin-tight unitards with no front, sequin underwire bras with the cups cut out. I even did a striptease dressed as a little girl in a gingham dress with pigtails to the disco version of On the Good Ship, Lollipop with Disco Man. Men would rush to the edge of the stage, filled with desire for my breasts. Years later, after I'd had my lumpectomy and received the diagnosis of cancer, it was time to go back for my post-op consultation. I gathered together a well-researched list of questions, my husband Stephen, and a tape recorder. It's amazing what I don't hear in these appointments with doctors. It was an invasive intraductal carcinoma, 1.7 centimeters in size. Now the question is, what was the biological behavior of this tumor in you before it was removed? Was it just there, or had it moved to another place in your body? Now, we don't really have any good tests yet for systemic involvement. We can do CAT scans, bone scans, liver spleen scans, blood tests, but none of these are really sensitive enough to check on the molecular level. So, what are my options? She's a surgeon. With her, I know what my options are. But for me, at that time, that was not an option. How could my body do this to me? What about all those years of party, smoking cigarettes, pot, whatever? Hey, wait a minute, I was clean and sober for 7 years. Yeah? What about the preceding 15? You were pretty sexually active. Hey, wait a minute. Was it growing up in LA? With all that smog? Maybe. Was it because I had a bad relationship with my mother? Because I like coffee with half and half in it? Was it the under-eye bras, the aluminum in the VO juice, the chlorine in the tampons, the poison in the food? Was it my jeans? Oh, they were too tight. Oh, I forgot to have kids. I love sugar. I don't love enough. I have repressed anger. At one time, I wanted to be a doctor, but the reason I'm not a doctor is because I failed chemistry. I can't stand the sight of blood, and sick people skeeve me out. You know, I think the only reason I ever wanted to be a doctor was so that I could hear, bong, Dr. Goodwin, stat to the OR. I had my lumpectomy and a second one to get clear margins. But what do I do now? Is there still cancer in my body? I don't know. So I began reading the vast quantity of scientific information, describing treatments and procedures I couldn't even begin to understand. And I had to be honest with myself. At that time, the options that Western medicine had to offer me, lethal doses of chemotherapy, rays of radiation, and hormone-altering prescriptions of tamoxifen. At that time, I did not consider forms of healing. They frightened me. And so, my friends began sending me articles from alternative periodicals, newsletters from clinics in Europe, and books about people who were cancer-free because, and I find myself entering the world of alternative medicine! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the land of healing, where you can bring yourself back to complete health and feel better than you have probably felt in your entire life. Now, let's begin with food. Remember, eat as if your life depended on it, because it does. How about diet? Let's see, we can try the no zone. Oh, the zone. The no fat, change your life completely, become macrobiotic, never go out. Yes, eat seaweed and strained seeds and miso for breakfast. Oh, and remember, everything organic and eliminate dairy products, meat, poultry, coffee, chocolate. Hey, I like chocolate. Alcohol, tobacco, recreational drugs, sugar, sucanat, maple syrup, honey. No sugar? And remember to juice, lots and lots of juice. And I don't mean bananas and pineapple. I'm talking about all those green leafy vegetables. Swiss chard, spinach, cabbage, and kale. Squeezed inside a juicer to make a lovely green slime. No sugar? And become informed. Be sure to read Deepak Chopra, Bernie Siegel, Susan Love, Susan Weed, Carolyn Mace, Michael Lerner, Steve Austin, Andrew Weil, The Breast Book, Breast Cancer, Breast Health, My Healing from Breast Cancer, Choices in Healing, Spontaneous Healing, Breast Cancer, What You Should Know But Might Not Be Told, The ECAC Connection, Beating Cancer with Nutrition, Making Miracles Happen, Kitchen Table Wisdom, It's Not About the Bike, Close to the Bone, The Red Devil, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Okay, but what else can I do? What about treatment? Well, let's just take a look at a small sampling of some of the treatment options that are available to you. The Gerson therapy, with its famous coffee enemas. Is that black? Or with cream and sugar? Expose yourself to severe fevers and chills. once a week for 6 months, using Coley's toxins. Of course, these are only available in third world countries, like Guatemala and Florida. Na 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 na, na 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 na. Use shark cartilage. They never get cancer. Kill all the sharks so that we can live? In Israel, a scribe has rediscovered an ancient potion made up of 11 different herbs. Using this information, as well as knowledge from rabbinic, Arabic, and other sources, he has created a potion made up of echinacea, myrrh, skullcap, and hot peppers. In New York, there's a lady who can shrink your tumors for $200 an hour using angels and light. It's true. In the United States, immunology scientists have created direct gene transfer. The DNA of a cancer cell, when disrupted, often gives rise to mutant proteins. These can then be recognized by the immune system and destroyed. Every morning, go outside in your bare feet. Take a walk. Feel the energy of Mother Earth coming into your body. My cousin, he'd hold his nose, knock back 2 quarts of Coors, and ride on the tilt-a-whirl. Cancer's gone. Go ahead, make a choice. I changed my diet 3 times. I try coffee enemas, and then I graduate to Calemas. If you don't know, don't ask, you're lucky. I apply pine tar poultices to my breasts to pull the cancer out through my skin and cannot submerge myself in water for the entire 6 weeks they are on my body. I take 30 supplement pills a day. I rub my breasts with essential oils. I learn to collect weeds, dry them, and create infusions. I go on shamanic journeys. I take a sweat lodge. I even go to the woman in New York City for $200 an hour who works with angels and light. I use Bach flower remedies, live red blood cell analysis, and I find out that jumping on the mini tramp for 30 minutes a day will stimulate my immune system. I practice the Simonton method. 3 times a day, I sit quietly and visualize the cancer in my body. At first, it appears to me as a pile of black slime. And then, I visualize something that will eliminate the cancer. First, I visualize ladies, thousands of them with picnic baskets, skipping to the cancer, picking up Guitos, putting them in the basket, skipping to my intestines, and out they go! Then, I imagine samurai warriors! Hiya ha! Hiya ha! Hiya ha! Hiya ha! Wah! Ya! Hiya ha! Wah! Hiya! Hiya ha! Hiya ha! Hoo! Hoo! And then I imagine angels singing to the cancer. Hoo! Hoo! And the cancer shrinking. Until the cancer's gone, and I am cancer-free. Only, I'm not cancer-free. And then, my friend John gets diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma. My first friend to be diagnosed since I was diagnosed with cancer. He calls me on the phone one day, and his voice sounds exactly like my father's voice when my father was dying of cancer and I was 15. I remember standing around the hospital bed with friends of the family from the church, and they were all talking about how, oh, he looks great, he's gonna make it. And I'm thinking, why are they lying? It's obvious the man's dying. There's these tubes coming out of different parts of his body going into various containers beside the bed. And the sound of his breathing. And I couldn't make myself call John back. And then he died. I keep imagining that somewhere there's got to be a doctor who put together Western medicine alternative methods. Nope. And then my friend Melissa tells me about an anthroposophic doctor in Hudson, New York. That's a doctor who studied to become an MD and then went on to study the teachings and philosophy of Rudolf Steiner. His philosophies maintain that through a prescribed method of self-discipline, an awareness of the spiritual world can be attained. I decided to drive to her farm. Her office was quiet. She had windows out, looking over flowering fruit trees and leaping llamas. We had this long conversation about how somewhere along the way I had lost a commitment to myself, and that cancer was an opportunity for me to have a new commitment. And I needed to feel an enthusiasm for my malady. I needed to bring warmth into my body. And one of the ways to bring warmth into my body was with bees. So we went outside her office and she had a beehive. She put this little glass jar on the hole in the back of the beehive. A little bee flew in. We brought it back into the office. I sat on the examining table, top down. She pulled out these long tweezers, reached into the jar and pulled out the bee. By now the bee was pretty pissed. And she takes the bee and she lays the bee on my breast right at the tumor site. And the little bee butt's wiggling. And I see the stinger coming out. And then I see it stinging. And I don't have an allergic reaction, which means I get to do bee sting therapy. I get to find a beekeeper who's willing to sell me bees every week, and then Stephen has to build a bee box, and I have to make sure the bees don't get cold. 3 times a week I go into my bathroom and I pull my long tweezers out, reach into the bee box and get a bee, lay it on my breast. I have to sting myself 4 times and then watch the bees die. After about 8 weeks, there's not much change. I call the doctor. She says, "I think you need to consider a mastectomy." Look, I have been trying to keep my breast for 3.5 years. I'm sure there's something else that can be done. Well, if you feel that way, fine. Good luck. I hope you find someone, and when you're cancer-free, be sure to call me back. Click. What? I couldn't believe it. She hung up on me. I was so pissed. I have this lump growing in my breast. None of the alternative treatments I'm doing are stopping it. I don't know what to do. I'm freaking out. Things are going out of control here. So I call my friend Jane. She's been chronically ill for a very long time. She has done everything. I tell her, "Jane, what am I going to do?" She says, "BJ," she's the kind of person. She goes for tests. She brings him to the doctor. The doctor looks at the test, looks at her. She's, "You should be dead." And then they start questioning her. They don't question the tests. She tells me, "BJ, I think you could go see my guy in New York. He's a little weird, but I think you can handle it." Her guy in New York? He has an office on the Upper West Side in one of those pay-by-week hotels that hasn't been redone. I go up the stairs and there's grime in the cracks. And as I walk down the hallway, it's worn carpeting and it has that kind of old smell. I feel like I'm going to get an illegal abortion. I knock on this door that's been painted so many times it doesn't even fit into the door jamb. The door opens and he's just some guy. He got sick, nobody could heal him, so he started to try and find ways to heal himself, and in the process discovered these different healing modalities that sometimes help people with chronic illness. I squeeze past him into the tiniest room I've ever seen. I sit in the only other chair. Next to me is this double bed with a faded bedspread. And then the wall space is all filled with bookshelves with books about healing I've never seen. And then there's a counter, forget it. It could never be clean. And on top of it is a broken gas burner from the previous century. And then there's a window with an air conditioning unit and lots of New York City dirt. And the smallest washroom I've ever seen, filled with supplements. We're sitting knee to knee, and he explains, again, the exact nature of my disease. It's the endocrine system. And then he tells me what I'm going to need to do. Weekly appointments in New York City, constantly changing supplements that can only be purchased from one pharmacy in New York City, extensive testing done on my endocrine system, and I need to find a doctor who can deal with the cancer directly, preferably not with chemotherapy. I can't do it! I just can't do it. I can't jump through another set of hoops that leads who knows where. I have an acupuncturist, a naturopath, a homeopath, physical therapist, and none of them can agree on what kind of supplements I'm supposed to be taking. I'm trying to stay on this diet, and I've never had a diet in my life. And I'm trying to keep up to date on the latest treatments, procedures, doctors. I'm overwhelmed. I have become a medical consultant without any training. Well, I guess it's time to saddle up, little Philly, and head on back to Western medicine. They can't all be wrong. Go on, get yourself some opinions. Whoa, that's a huge paradigm shift. Come on, it's time to go to one of them cancer treatment facilities. One of them medical industrial complexes, a hyphenated hospital. The hospital schedules me for a full day of appointments. I begin by filling out a questionnaire. Family medical history, birth control choices, are you allergic to any medication? I begin the day seeing a new surgeon, and then I go for a core needle biopsy. I find myself in a large dark room with a small machine and a male technician. He explains the core needle biopsy procedure to me, and I'm in tears. The nurse comes in to begin the procedure, and he says, "Wait a minute, we need a little more time." She leaves. "You don't have to do this if you don't want to." And just because he's so kind, and he reminds me that I have a choice, I decide to go through with the procedure. He takes out the device. It's like a reverse nail gun. A needle shoots out, picks up a few cells, and sucks them back in. He lays it on my breast at the tumor site. Ka-chunk! 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 I'm fairly traumatized after that procedure. And then I wander through the vast complex, down the corridors and up elevators, trying to find my way to the hospital next door. Whoops. And I locate the oncology floor. They escort me into a consultation room, and I stand looking out the window, thinking, how did I end up in an oncologist's office? There's a knock on the door. He enters with 3 interns. "Do you mind if they join us? It's a teaching hospital." "No." "I mean to say, yes, I mind. I feel uncomfortable. It's me alone in the room with 4 men I don't know. And I forgot to eat lunch. I'm feeling a little hungry, a little cranky, and I forgot to bring a friend with me for this day of doctor appointments." They begin interrogating me about my previous treatment choices, and then they say, "Well, we want to look at the results of the core needle biopsy and the tests before we recommend a procedure. But first, before you go, we'd like you to see the treatment center." It's a big room with large windows looking out over an office tower. There's big maroon lazy-boy recliners, all facing the nurse's station, a linoleum floor, dropped ceiling with recessed fluorescent lights, and lots of metal tracks, so that you can pull a curtain around each lazy-boy, and the patients can have a semblance of privacy. Each and every lazy-boy has its own television set on an adjustable metal swing arm. There's square metal cabinets filled with supplies for the oncology nurses and round metal trash cans overflowing with used sterile paper and plastic products. And there are yellow, well-marked plastic biohazard tubs. The room is painted a kind of pastel icy blue that looks a little gray with the fluorescent lights. Cozy, huh? When it's time to go back for my appointment, I decide I need some support. I call my friend Amy. She comes from a family of doctors. They do not intimidate her. Dun, 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 dun. On the day of the appointment, we advance on the complex. Dun, 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 dun. Infiltrate the parking structure and find a strategic location for our car. Do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do. We don our protective gear, leather jackets, fluorescent wigs, sunglasses, and clown noses. This really happened. We secure an elevator and locate a consultation room. The doctor enters. He laughs. Wrong. He asks, "Why are you wearing a wig and a clown nose?" Wrong. He pretends not to notice. Right. Has spread to your lungs. You have stage 4 cancer. Well, what about stage 5 and 6? There is no stage 5 and 6. Because your tumor is estrogen positive, the only thing that we can recommend at this point is to try to get your body to stop producing estrogen. You could do monthly injections of Lupron or Zoladex. Side effects: loss of sex drive, hot flashes, dry vagina. Or you can do daily doses of tamoxifen. Side effects: doubles your risks of blood clots, increases your chances of liver cancer. Or you could just have your ovaries removed. Well, how long would I have to do these treatments? He then gives me what I now call the oncology look. The look that says, "It doesn't really matter because you don't have that long to live." This isn't right. No, this isn't right. I need to go for another opinion. My friend Bill, who hasn't said anything up to this point, finally takes me aside and says, "BJ, I really think you need to go to this clinic in, of all places, a city I never wanted to visit, Chicago." I download a 25-page questionnaire from the internet. Are you right or left-handed? How do you feel about each and every one of your personal relationships? How often and for how long do you brush your teeth? Thorough. I go to the clinic. It's in a regular office building. When I open the door and come in, I'm warmly greeted by members of the staff. There's not a white coat in sight. You can't tell the difference between the staff, the doctors, the patient support group. There's this large open room with light streaming in through the windows, soft round furniture. Patients are sitting talking to each other. And there's little private rooms off to the side if you want to go and sleep and have a little privacy. There's a well-stocked kitchen filled with herbal teas, organic instant soups, and sesame seaweed crackers, as well as filtered water. And the room is filled with plants. There's lots of beautiful photographs of nature, and there's even a small fountain. I meet with the doctor. He tells me, "We believe cancer is a chronic disease. As long as you can stay alive, you will have more treatment options available." And his eyes are filled with hope and a belief in the ability of my body to heal. They prescribe the usual protocol, Taxol and Herceptin, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Then I get to meet with the nutritionist who explains the complex diet and then hands me my lists of supplements. Now I'm up to 60 a day. But then they want me to meet with the exercise counselor. They insist on exercising 30 minutes a day, and that includes the day after treatment. And they show me, they have all of these things, mini trams and physio balls, elasto bands. They'll teach me qigong and yoga. And then finally, somebody understands the stress around having a chronic illness. I get to meet with one of 3 therapists. I can choose from self-hypnosis, bioenergetic feedback, 3 different kinds of meditation techniques, EMDR, or just regular talk therapy. This place is more than a clinic. It's like going to cancer college. There's just one catch. They insist that I have a double portacath installed. The first time the oncology nurse explained this to me, I went, oh, where does it go? A little portacath place in my heart? Oh, yeah. She said, well, when the chemo goes in, sometimes it burns your veins, and then depending on how long you do it, they can collapse, and while you're on chemo, you have to have weekly blood draws. And I go, okay, let me see. So they bring the device out. It's this small device about that big, and it has a little tube coming out. There's these loops on the side. I say, well, what are those loops for? And she goes, that's so that we can tack it to your chest wall tissue. It's a shame the human body doesn't come with one of these at birth. Then they loop the little loop into my superior vena cava, so when the port is accessed, the drugs can shoot into my body, go right into my heart, and as my heart pumps, they go shooting through my body. Begin the operation to install the portacath. Take these steroids 1 day before, during, and after treatment. Me on steroids. Ooh. I can't sleep. I have this weird metallic taste in my mouth. I have this total super caffeine energy. I just had this plastic thing installed in my body. I'm freaking out. Begin the infusion. I feel the drugs enter my body. And now my body feels like all of those places on the planet that have been invaded by foreign armies throughout history. And my fast-growing cells feel like all of the people that have been murdered by those invading armies. And my spirit feels like all of the religions that have tried to stay alive while their sacred places and priests are murdered. Fatigue, exhaustion, constipation, diarrhea, constipation, diarrhea. No, I'm not hungry. Oh, a bowel movement. Ow, a hemorrhoid. My toes are numb. Exercise? I feel almost better. Time for more chemo. Fatigue, exhaustion, diarrhea. There's hair on my pillow. Oh, ow. A bike ride? I feel better. More chemo. Fatigue, Austin, Constilla. Oh, ow! Where's my period? Permanent damage. I just want to smoke some pot. I feel more chemo. Fatigue, diapation. Oh, ow! Where's my sex drive? Hot flash, qigong. More chemo. Fatigue, oh, ow. More chemo. How much longer? I fly to Chicago every month. That takes 2 hours. And then I ride the train from South Chicago to North Chicago. That takes another 2 hours. Then I'm in clinic all day. I have a lot of time to read. Only now I find myself reading romance and detective novels. Genres I used to turn my nose up at, I'm now inhaling. His hands dropped to my breasts, stroking and squeezing, and then slid down my sides. His full weight rested on me as he cupped and raised me for still greater penetration. I screamed. He stopped my mouth with his, not a kiss, but another attack. forcing my lips open, bruising my lips, rasping my face with bearded stubble. I bit his lips and take the blood. I raked him from nape to buttocks, causing him to rear and scream in his turn. We savaged each other, biting and clawing, tearing each other's flesh, in the consuming desire to be one. Why don't men read these books? I'm bald. Not just the hair on my head, the hair on my entire body. Naked, I look like a prepubescent skinhead. I decide that sometimes I'm gonna wanna pass, so I go out and I try to find the best wig I can. The lady puts it on my head, she cuts it to try and make it look, like my hair. I come home, I put it on. Stephen goes, "Oh, no, take that out. Oh, you don't look like yourself." Of course I don't look like myself. I don't wear wigs. I decide to heck with it. I'm gonna wear my regular clothes, bald head, go out. No, I don't care. So I go out in the street. Bald men pass me. They rub their heads, wink, nod, hey. And these days, when people pierce, you don't even want to think about it, and tattoo everything, I am walking down the street in my town, and these two female tourists are passing by. And as they go past, I hear one of them say, "Wow, they sure have some badass women in this town." I go through security at the airport, and the guard looks at me and goes, "Are you a Buddhist nun?" And I'm coming back from treatment talking to this doctor. At the end of the conversation, he looks at me and says, "Well, I figured you were either on chemo, a Hare Krishna, or a radical lesbian feminist." I'm a person undergoing treatment for a serious disease, and this is just one of the side effects. I want there to be a no hair day. I want everybody who's in treatment and bald to take their wigs and hats off and let everybody see just how many of us there are. There's an epidemic going on out there, only nobody seems to want to look at it. People who are 20 and 30 are getting cancer that people used to get when they were 60 or 70. Oh, but wait, we don't want to change anything. No, we don't want to disturb the status quo. Let's just keep polluting the air, the water, the food. Let's just keep living our stressful lives. Let's just keep using toxic chemicals to heal, putting plastic things in our body, going to the medical industrial complexes that are financed by the same people that are creating the pollutants in the atmosphere. But what do you do? What do you do when the toxic chemicals no longer work and the medical industrial complexes don't have any more answers and your insurance company won't pay for anything else because they don't consider it a medical procedure? I've been on chemotherapy for over a year. I had no idea it was going to go on for this long. I tell my doctors, "Woof, I need a break. I want to go to Mexico." They say, "Okay." I go to this small colonial town. It's not a tourist town. It's the middle of winter, and it's hot. I'm dressed in as few clothes as possible, walking down the street. The walls are covered in stucco, and there's this beautiful sienna red on the bottom and off-white on the top. And there's two big plazas in this town. And in the center of the plazas are these beautiful fountains filled with water. And there's large leafy trees that make shade so people can sit on the benches in the shade. I walk down and past the woman who sells the tamales and the other woman who sells the corn on the cob stuck on a stick slathered in mayonnaise with hot sauce and lots of queso, clearly not on the diet. I walk up the cobblestone street and pass the girl that sells the clay, pitchers, and the bakery, and the man in the booth that sells the little spirit icons and the charms and the candles to burn in the basilica. I enter the basilica. It's cool and dark. And at the very end, in the apse, there's this tall glass pillar with Our Lady of Help. She's made out of corn husks and orchid glue. She's 6 feet tall. Her face is painted beautiful, and she has on this lovely dress. There's blue curtains surrounding her, and sometimes, when the light's right, it shines in through the stained glass window and casts light on her face. It's quiet, except for the sound of the women who are crawling on knees from the back of the basilica all the way to the front, praying as they go. I sit in the pew, and then I get down on my knees to pray. Praying is not one of my spiritual practices, so it sounds a little more like begging. Excuse me. I've had this cancer in my body for over 5 years. Do you think you could take it out? And then I think of all the other people I know who have cancer. Because when you have cancer, you know a lot of people who have cancer. And I say, you know all those people? Could you take the cancer out of their body too? And then I think about all the other people I don't know who have cancer. How about a miracle? Could you do a miracle? Just get rid of all the cancer altogether. And then I realize there's a whole lot of suffering everywhere. Please, a lot of healing needs to go on down here. And I'm on my knees for a really long time.